The ancestor of the arthropoda was in all probability a segmented worm-like marine creature that lived in oceans during the late Precambrian. By the early to mid-Cambrian, 545-20 million years ago, the early arthropods had already evolved into a range of clearly recognizable groups with distinct body plans. Arthropods are characterized by a number of features: the possession of a periodically molted, chitinous cuticle that acts as a rigid exoskeleton for the internal attachment of striated muscles, segmental paired legs, and the aggregation and/or fusing of body segments into discrete functional units, of which the most universal is the head. Besides the head there may be a trunk, as in the Myriapoda, or a separate thorax and abdomen as in the Crustacea and Hexapoda. Based on the ubiquity of achitin in arthropod cuticles, similarities in musculature and tendon systems and recent molecular data, the overwhelming consensus of opinion is that this very large taxon is monophyletic. However, the relationships within the arthropoda have been the subject of much controversy for more than 100 years. Recent molecular and genetic data confirm that the Hexapoda comprising the Insecta and 3 other non-insect hexapod classes are monophyletic, but that Crustacea are not. The monophyletic Hexapoda and paraphyletic Crustacea are now thought to form a single superclade called the Pancrustacea Figure 1. The mandibles of these two groups have similar origins, and the development of the nervous system is similar, as is the structure and wiring of the compound eyes. A little over 1.5 million species of living organism have been scientifically described to date. The vast majority, 66%, are arthropods such as crustaceans, arachnids, myriapods and insects. Insects represent 75% of all animals, and one insect order, the beetles Coleoptera, is famously species-rich, but another comprising the wasps, bees and ants Hymenoptera may rival the beetles if taxonomists ever complete their studies. One thing is clear, however, the full extent of Earth's biodiversity remains a mystery. From attempts over 30 years ago to estimate the number of extant species to the present day we still only have a rough idea of how many species live alongside us. Estimates range from as few as 5 million to perhaps as many as 10 to 12 million species. The task of enumerating them may become substantially easier as the loss and degradation of natural habitats, especially the forests of the humid tropics, continues unabated. It is certain that the majority of insect species will become extinct before they are known to science. Arthropoda. Mandibulata. Pancrustacea. Altacrustacea. Myricrustacea. Mystococarida. Pentastomida. Ostracoda. Branchiora. O. Ligo Street Raca. Acari. Scorpiones. Scyphocera. Pycnogonida. Polyphygy. Chelicrata. Anastraca. Notostraca. Diplostraca. Copepoda. Thecostraca. Bericrstacea. Pseudoscorpions. Decapoda. Xenocarida. Hexapoda. M. Yriapoda. Philocarida. Araneae. Symphyla. Parapoda. Prologue XV. Insects are the dominant multicellular life form on the planet, ranging in size from minute parasitic wasps at around 0.2 millimeters to stick insects measuring 35 centimeters in length. Insects have evolved diverse lifestyles, and although they are mainly terrestrial, there are a significant number of aquatic species. Insects have a versatile, lightweight and waterproof cuticle, are generally small in size and have a complex nervous system surrounded by an effective blood-brain barrier. Insects were the first creatures to take to the air and have prodigious reproductive rates. These factors, together with the complex interactions they have with other organisms, have led to their great success both in terms of species richness and abundance. The very high diversity of insects today is the result of a combination of high rates of speciation and the fact that many insect taxa are persistent, that is, they show relatively low rates of extinction. In comparison to insects, vertebrate species make up less than 3% of all species. As herbivores they are altogether outmunched by the myriad herbivorous insects. In tropical forests, for example, 12-15% of the total leaf area is eaten by insects as compared with only 2-3% lost to vertebrate herbivores. Termites remove more plant material from the African savannas than all the teeming herds of wildebeest and other ungulates put together. Vertebrates also fail to impress as predators. Ants are the major carnivores on the planet, devouring more animal tissue per annum than all the other carnivores. In many habitats ants make up 1/4 of the total animal biomass present. Insects pollinate the vast majority of the world's 250,000 or so species of flowering plant. The origin of bees coincides with the main radiation of the angiosperms approximately 100 million years ago, and without them there would be no flowers, fruit or vegetables. At least 25% of all insect species are parasites or predators of other insect species. Insects are also important in nutrient recycling by disposing of carcasses and dung. Insects are the principal food source for many other animals. Virtually all birds and a large number of other vertebrates feed on them. An average brood of great tit chicks will consume around 120,000 caterpillars while they are in the nest, and a single swallow chick may consume upwards of 200,000 bugs, flies and beetles before it fledges. Insects can also have a huge negative impact on humans. 1/6 of all crops grown worldwide are lost to herbivorous insects and the plant diseases they transmit. About 1 in 6 human beings alive today is affected by an insect-borne illness such as plague, sleeping sickness, river blindness, yellow fever, filariasis and leishmaniasis. About 40% of the world's population are at risk of malaria. More than 500 million people become severely ill and more than 1 million die from this disease every year. To complete the destructive side of their activities, insects can cause great damage to wooden structures and a wide range of natural materials and fabrics. But without insects performing essential ecosystem services, the Earth would be a very different place, and most terrestrial vertebrates that depend on them directly as food would become extinct. The loss of bees alone might cause the extinction of 1/4 of all life on Earth. A total loss of insects would see the human population plummet to perhaps a few 100,000 individuals subsisting mainly on cereals. Their small size and high reproductive rates make insects ideal model systems in molecular, cellular, organismal, ecological, and evolutionary studies. Indeed, many of the most important discoveries in genetics, physiology, behavior, ecology, and evolutionary biology have relied on insects. There may come a day when humans venture far enough into space to visit other planets on which life has developed. If we do and there are multicellular organisms present, it is likely they will look a lot like insects. Mini biographies of the insect orders. The Insecta and 3 other classes, the Protura, Dipleura and Collembola, together comprise the arthropod superclass, Hexapoda. The class Insecta is divided into 30 orders, which are outlined below. THEPRIMITIVEWINGLESSINFRACLASSAPTERYGOTA Bristletails. Approximately 500 species. Body length, 7 to 15 m. Bristletails are the most primitive living insects, having persisted for more than 400 million years. They are mainly nocturnal, living in leaf litter and under stones in a wide range of habitats from coastal to mountainous regions. The body, which is elongate with a cylindrical cross-section, is covered in tiny scales and has a characteristically humped thorax. The head has a pair of long antennae, large contiguous compound eyes and 3 well-developed ocelli, single-faceted, simple eyes. The mouth parts are simple, with long maxillary palps. The mandibles have a single point of articulation termed monocondylar and are used to pick at lichens and algae. This jaw articulation is a very primitive feature separating the bristletails from all other insects, including the Thysanura, which have 2 points. Bristletails. Approximately 500 species. Body length, 7 to 15 m. Bristletails are the most primitive living insects, having persisted for more than 400 million years. They are mainly nocturnal, living in leaf litter and under stones in a wide range of habitats from coastal to mountainous regions. The body, which is elongate with a cylindrical cross-section, is covered in tiny scales and has a characteristically humped thorax. The head has a pair of long antennae, large contiguous compound eyes and 3 well-developed ocelli, single-faceted, simple eyes. The mouth parts are simple, with long maxillary palps. The mandibles have a single point of articulation termed monocondylar and are used to pick at lichens and algae. This jaw articulation is a very primitive feature separating the bristletails from all other insects, including the Thysanura, which have 2 points of articulation decondylar. The abdomen has accessory walking appendages called styles present on abdominal segments 2 to 9, which support the abdomen when bristletails run over uneven or steep surfaces. Surface water can be absorbed through 1 or 2 pairs of eversible vesicles located on the underside of abdominal segments 1 to 7. The abdomen has a pair of multi-segmented cerci and a much longer central filament. Bristletails can jump by rapid flexion of the abdomen. XVI Prologue. THYSANURAZYGENTOMA. Silverfish. Less than 400 species. Body length, 2 to 22 m. Although very similar to bristletails, silverfish are actually more closely related to the winged insects. The body, which may have a covering of scales, is rather more flattened and the thorax is not humped. Silverfish are scavengers in soil, leaf litter, on trees and sometimes in buildings, where they can be minor pests. The head has a pair of long antennae, small compound eyes and may have ocelli. The maxillary palps are shorter than those of the Archaeognatha and the jaws, although still of a primitive design, have 2 points of articulation and act in the transverse plane. Styles may be present on abdominal segments 2 to 9, but usually on fewer segments 7 to 9. Pairs of water-absorbing, eversible vesicles usually occur on the abdominal segments 2 to 7, although in some species they are absent. The end of the abdomen has a pair of cerci and a central filament. Silverfish are fast-running but do not jump. THEWINGEDINSECTS. The infraclass Pterygota is made up of 3 very unequal divisions. The mayflies Ephemeroptera comprising less than 0.3% of all insect species, and the dragonflies and damselflies Odonata comprising approximately 0.5% of all insect species, are each a division. Species in these 2 divisions are unable to fold their wings back along the body. Together they are sometimes termed the Paleoptera, although this is not a natural monophyletic grouping. The third, and by far the largest division, comprising all other insect species, is the Neoptera, which are monophyletic. DIVISIONI. EPHEMEROPTERA. Mayflies. Approximately 2,500 species. Body length, 5 to 34 m. Wingspan, up to 50 millimeters. The Ephemeroptera are the oldest basal group of winged insects on Earth today and are unique in having a pre-adult wing stage called the subimago. They are the only insects that molt after they have developed functional wings. This habit was probably much more common in extinct Carboniferous and Permian taxa, where immature stages had wing-like structures and molted them throughout their lives. The order is divided into 2 suborders, the Schistonoda split-back mayflies and the Panoda fused-back mayflies. Schistonodan nymphs have their wing pads free along the midline, whereas in Panodan nymphs, the wing pads are fused along the midline of the body. Prologue XV. Mayflies are soft-bodied with nearly cylindrical bodies, longish legs and typically 2 pairs of wings, which, when at rest, are held over the body. The head has a pair of short bristle-like antennae, a pair of large compound eyes and 3 ocelli. Adults have reduced non-functional mouthparts. The end of the abdomen bears a pair of elongate cerci and, usually, a single, long central filament. The life cycle is dominated by the aquatic, nymphal stages and adults live for a very short time, often less than a day. DIVISIONII. ODONATA. Damselflies and dragonflies. Less than 600 species. Body length, up to 150 millimeters. Wingspan, 18 to 200 m. These fast-flying insects, often seen near water, are instantly recognizable. Odonats have a distinctive elongate body and are often brightly colored or metallic. They have a large, mobile head with very large compound eyes, 3 ocelli, short, hair-like antennae and biting mouthparts. They have 2 pairs of similarly sized wings, which can be used out of phase with each other, allowing great maneuverability. The nymphal stages, called naiads, are aquatic and actively hunt or ambush prey. The mouthparts are unique in that there is a prehensile labial mask, which can be rapidly extended. Spine-like palps on the labium impale prey items and the mask is then folded back toward the mouth. The order is split into 2 major suborders, the dragonflies Anisoptera and the damselflies Zygoptera. A third suborder, Ansiozygoptera, comprises only 2 oriental species. Dragonflies have round heads and very large eyes, while damselflies have broader heads with widely separated eyes. The large eyes give odonats near all-round vision and, as would be expected of aerial hunters, they are able to resolve distant objects better than any other insect. Divisionii, Neoptera. In all neopterans, flexor muscles attached to a third axillary scleroid at the base of the wings allow the wings to be folded back along the body. The evolution of a wing folding mechanism allowed much better exploitation of the terrestrial environment without the risk of wing damage. Subdivision, Hemimetabola. Plecoptera. Stoneflies. Approximately 2,000 species. Body length, 3 to 48 m. Maximum wingspan, about 100 millimeters. XV prologue. Stoneflies are slender insects with soft, slightly flattened bodies. The head has bulging eyes, 2 or 3 ocelli and thread-like antennae. The mouth parts are weakly developed or non-functional. They have 2 pairs of membranous wings, which are held flat or folded around the body at rest. They are not strong flyers and seldom travel far from water. The elongate abdomen has a pair of single or multi-segmented cerci. The order is divided into 2 suborders, the Arctoprolaria and the Antarctoprolaria. With the exception of one family, all Arctoprolaria are found in the northern hemisphere. All families in the Antarctoprolaria are found in the southern hemisphere. Stonefly nymphs are aquatic and can swim using lateral body movements. Many graze algae from rocks. Blattodaria. Cockroaches. Approximately 4,000 species. Body length, 3 to 100 m. Cockroaches are fast-running, flattened, broadly oval and leathery-bodied insects. The head, which is directed downwards and largely concealed by the pronotum, has biting mouthparts, well-developed compound eyes, 2 ocelli-like spots and long antennae. The front pairs of wings are toughened as protective, tegmina, to cover the larger, membranous hindwings. The abdomen carries a pair of oni or multi-segmented cerci. Eggs are typically laid in a toughened case or ruthica, a feature shared with the closely related but entirely predatory Mantodia. The vast majority of cockroaches are nocturnal, omnivorous or saprophagus species living in soil and leaf litter communities. Only about 40 species are considered pests because of their close association with humans, and only half of these have a significant impact. The main problem is that they can carry a huge diversity of pathogenic organisms on their tarsi and other body parts. When they feed, they regurgitate partly digested food and leave behind their feces and a characteristic offensive odor. Exposure to high levels of cockroach allergens in house dust can produce serious health problems such as allergies, dermatitis, eczema and asthma. Mantodea. Mantids. Approximately 2,300 species. Body length, 8 to 150 m. These distinctive predatory insects have a triangular, highly mobile head with large compound eyes, thread-like antennae and usually 3 ocelli. The prothorax is typically elongate and carries the specialized, raptorial front legs. The front wings are narrow and toughened, protecting the much larger membranous hindwings. Eggs are laid in a papery, foam or cellophane-like ootheca. Prologue 6. True binocular vision allows mantids to calculate the distance of their prey using triangulation. The coxa of the front legs is very elongate and the femur is enlarged and equipped with rows of sharp spines and teeth. The tibia, which is also spined or toothed, folds back on the inner face of the femur like a jackknife. The strike, which takes place in 2 phases, lasts less than 100 milliseconds. In the initial phase, the tibia are fully extended in readiness for the second phase, which takes the form of a rapid sweeping action. The femora are quickly extended and, at the same time, the tibia are flexed around the prey. Mantids, which are mainly diurnal, predate a wide range of insects, spiders and other arthropods, which they ambush or stalk. Larger species have even been recorded catching and eating vertebrates such as frogs, mice and even small birds. Isoptera. Termites. Less than 3,000 species. Body length, 3 to 20 m, mostly under 15 millimeters. Queens can be up to 100 millimeters, generally pale and soft-bodied. Termites are social insects living in permanent colonies with different castes of both sexes. Workers and soldiers are wingless, while the reproductives, kings and queens, have 2 pairs of equal-sized wings, which are shed after a nuptial flight. The foodstuff of termites, cellulose, is an abundant biomolecule but is difficult to break down. Termites have evolved symbiotic relationships with cellulase-producing microorganisms to make use of this resource. The gut of lower termites harbors protists, while those of the higher termites Termitidae contain bacterial symbionts. Termites can build impressively large nest structures, including the large multi-vented chimneys that ventilate the subterranean nests of African macroterm species and the wedge-shaped nests in northern Australia made by the magnetic termite, Amyderms meridionalis. Confined to regions between 45 to 50 north and south of the equator, termites have an immense impact on soil enrichment and carbon cycling. They may consume up to 1/3 of the annual production of dead wood, leaves and grass and be present in huge numbers, comprising 10% of all animal biomass present. Grylloblattodeanotoptera. Rock crawlers or ice crawlers. 26 species, 1 family, Grylloblattidae. Body length, 12 to 30 m. These slender, wingless, slightly hairy insects were first discovered in the Canadian Rockies in 1913 and are a relict group confined to certain high-altitude regions across the northern hemisphere. The head has small compound eyes, although these are sometimes absent, no ocelli, slender, thread-like antennae and simple, chewing mouthparts. The abdomen is cylindrical, with a pair of slender, multi-segmented cerci. XX Prologue. Gryloblattids live under stones, decaying wood and leaf litter in cold temperate forests and sometimes in caves. There may be 8 nymphal instars and complete nymphal development may take up to 5 to 6 years. As nymphs get older they become darker colored and add segments to their antennae at each molt. The adults typically live for less than 2 years. Mantophasmatodea. Gladiators, African rock crawlers or heel walkers 15 species, 1 family, Mantophasmatodea. Body length, 12 to 35 m. Discovered in 2002, the species that make up this small order live in dry, rocky habitats in southern Africa and may be related to the Gryloblattoidea. The head has well-developed compound eyes and long, slender antennae and biting mouthparts, but lacks ocelli. The name, heel walkers, refers to the way the claws are held clear of the ground when walking. These elongate, wingless insects can be found under stone and among tufts of grasses and other plants. At night they emerge to catch other insects, holding small prey using their spiny front and middle legs. Dermaptera. Earwigs. Approximately 1,900 species. Body length, 5 to 54 m. Mostly drab, nocturnal and generally reluctant to fly, the majority of these elongate and slightly flattened insects are immediately recognizable on account of their distinctive abdominal forceps-like cerci. The head, which may have a pair of compound eyes but no ocelli, has biting mouthparts and long antennae. The front wings are short, leathery and veinless, covering the large, semicircular hindwings. The order is divided into 3 very unequal suborders. The largest, which accounts for 99% of all known species, is the Forficulina, which prefer confined, humid microhabitats such as soil, leaf litter or beneath bark. The Hemimarina is made up of 11 species of African cockroach-like earwigs, which are ectoparasites in the fur of giant rats. The Ericksonina comprises 5 blind, wingless South Asian species that feed on skin fragments and excreta in the fur or roosts of 2 species of molluscid bat. The terminal forceps, which are usually straight in females and curved in males, are used in a variety of ways but mainly as weapons for defense and prey handling, but also for courtship displays. The flexible and telescopic abdominal segments allow earwigs to use their forceps in all directions and they often use this ability to assist in folding the large hindwings. Prologue XXI. ORTHOPTERA. Crickets, grasshoppers and relatives. Approximately 22,500 species. Body length, 5 to 155 m. These distinctive, elongate insects typically have enlarged hindlegs used for jumping. The head has well-developed compound eyes and may have ocelli. They have biting mouthparts and an enlarged, saddle or shield-shaped pronotum. The front wings are toughened and typically narrower than hindwings, which are folded in longitudinal pleats beneath. The abdomen has a pair of short, terminal cerci. The order is divided into 2 suborders, the Ensophera and the Calyphera. The Ensophera, comprising the crickets and katydids, have long or very long antennae and sing by rubbing structures on their front wings together. They are mainly nocturnal and solitary and most species mimic dead or living leaves. Many species are herbivorous, but some are partly or wholly predaceous. The ovipositor is always prominent and sword, sickle or stiletto-shaped. The Calyphera, comprising grasshoppers and locusts which show density-dependent polyphonism, have short antennae and the females never have prominent ovipositors. Songs are produced by a row of pegs on the hind femora rubbing against the edge of the front wings. They are generally ground-living, diurnal, grassant or forb feeders and can be cryptically colored or brightly colored to advertise their unpalatability. Several, such as the desert locust, Schistocerca gregoria, are serious crop pests. Phasmatodea. Stick and leaf insects. Greater than 3,000 species. Body length, up to 566 mm, mostly 10 to 100 m. The elongate body of stick insects can be short and smooth or large and very spiny or leaf-like. The head is characteristically domed and carries relatively long, thread-like antennae, chewing mouthparts, a pair of small compound eyes and, in winged species, ocelli. The front wings are short and toughened while the fan-shaped membranous hindwings are large. Many species are short-winged or wingless, and in others wing length varies between the sexes. Stick insects are slow-moving, herbivorous and mostly nocturnal. Their shape and cryptic coloring make them very difficult to see among foliage and affords them protection from predators. Some species freeze motionless when disturbed, holding the middle and hindlegs along the body and stretching out the front legs, while others sway to imitate the movement of the vegetation. Leaf insects, which are broad and flattened with fantastic leaf-like expansions, are contained in one family, the Phyllidae, comprising about 50 species confined to Southeast Asia, New Guinea and Australia. XXII Prologue. EMBIOPTERA, EMBIIDINA, EMBIODEA. Web spinners. Approximately 350 species. Body length, 3 to 20 m, mostly under 12 mm. Web spinners are narrow-bodied, cylindrical or slightly flattened gregarious insects living in warm temperate and tropical regions. The head has small, kidney-shaped compound eyes, thread-like antennae and biting mouthparts. The front legs of all life stages and both sexes have swollen basal tarsal segments containing glands, which produce silk to make communal galleries in soil, litter and under bark. As colonies grow, galleries and tunnels are extended to take in new food sources such as dead plant material, litter, lichens and mosses. Only adult females and nymphs feed. Males do not feed as adults and only use their jaws to grasp the female during copulation. Females are wingless but the males usually have 2 equal-sized pairs of long, narrow wings. The wings have hollow veins that can be inflated with hemolymph to make them stiff for flight. When the veins are not inflated, the wings can fold forwards without damage when the male has to run backwards through the galleries. Coraptera. Angel insects. 32 species. Body length, 2 to 3 m. Mostly associated with rotting wood, these small, delicate-bodied insects are termite-like. The adults are dimorphic, being either blind, pale and wingless resembling the nymphs or darkly pigmented with eyes and 2 pairs of pale, sparsely veined wings. The head carries a pair of short, thread-like antennae and may have ocelli. Zoropterans are gregarious under bark or in piles of wood dust, leaf litter or in termite nests, where they eat fungal threads, spores, mites and other small arthropods. As populations grow, winged morphs disperse to new locations and the wings are then shed. All the known species are currently assigned to a single genus, Zorotypus. Psocoptera. Bark lice and book lice. Less than 4500 species. Body length, 1 to 10 m, mostly under 6 mm. Bark lice and book lice are very common insects, which on account of their small size and cryptic coloration, are often overlooked. The head is relatively large, with bulging compound eyes, long, thread-like antennae, biting mouthparts and, in winged species, 3 ocelli. The thorax is slightly humped and the wings, when present, are held roof-like over the body at rest. Prologue XXIII. Psocoptera can be found in a very wide range of terrestrial habitats, including caves and the nests of birds, bees and wasps, but are particularly abundant in litter and soil and on the bark and foliage of trees and shrubs. Most species graze on algae, lichens and molds and fungal spores, but some can be pests of stored products. 3 suborders are recognized: the Trogeomorpha, considered the most primitive, the Troptomorpha and the Socomorpha, the most advanced suborder, containing more than 80% of the known species. Phthiraptera. Parasitic lice. Approximately 5,000 species. Body length, 1 to 10 m, mostly under 6 mm. These small, wingless, dorso-ventrally flattened ectoparasites live permanently on bird or mammal hosts, where they feed on skin debris, secretions, feathers or blood. The eyes are very small or absent, there are no ocelli and the antennae are short, with a maximum of 5 segments. The legs are short and robust, with the tarsi and claws typically modified for grasping hair or feathers. Several species are significant vectors of human and animal diseases. The nymphs pass through 3 instars or nymphal stages, taking anything from 2 weeks to a few months to reach adulthood. Many lice have symbiotic relationships with bacteria which live in special mycetocytes associated with the digestive system. These bacteria allow the lice to digest feather protein, keratin, and blood. There are 4 suborders within the Phiraptera. The Amblycera are a primitive group of chewing lice living on birds and mammals. The Rhynchophthorina are ectoparasites of elephants and warthogs. The largest suborder, the Ischnicera, are chewing lice mainly found on birds, while the Anoplura are sucking lice which include the human head and body louse and the pubic louse. Hemiptera. True bugs. Greater than 82,000 species. Body length, 1 to 100 m, mostly under 50 mm. True bugs range from minute, wingless scale insects to giant water bugs with raptorial front legs capable of catching fish and frogs. Compound eyes are often prominent and ocelli may be present. Bugs lack maxillary and labial palps and the mandibles and maxillae, which are enclosed by the labium, take the form of elongate, grooved stylets through which saliva can be injected and liquid sucked up. 2 pairs of wings are usually present. There are 4 distinct suborders. The Ochinorintia, comprising planthoppers, leafhoppers, froghoppers, treehoppers, lantern bugs and cicadas, and the Sternorintia, including jumping plant lice, whiteflies, phylloxerans, aphids. XXIV prologue. And scale insects are herbivorous. The Calaerintia is represented by a single family of cryptic bugs found in the southern hemisphere. The majority of species belonging to the 4th suborder, the Heteroptera, are herbivorous, but the suborder contains a significant number of predatory taxa and even some blood-sucking species. A characteristic feature of Heteropterans is the possession of defensive stink glands. Many bug species are significant plant pests and some transmit human and animal diseases. Thysanoptera. Thrips. Approximately 5,500 species. Body length, 0.512 mm, mostly under 3 mm. Thrips are small or very small, slender-bodied insects with prominent, large faceted eyes, short antennae and asymmetrical piercing and sucking mouthparts. One mandible is very small and non-functional while the other is sharp and stylet-like and used to penetrate plant tissue or sometimes the bodies of minute insects. The other mouthparts form hemipteran-like stylets and are used to suck up liquid food. They usually have 2 pairs of very narrow, hair-fringed wings, but wings can be reduced, vestigial or absent. 3 ocelli are present in winged individuals. The tarsi have an eversible bladder-like structure between the claws. Many species are serious plant pests. Although these insects are most closely related to the Hemiptera, they are unusual in that there are 1 or more pupil-like resting stages between the 2, true nymphal stages and the adult. In some cases there are 3 pre-adult stages of which the first may still be capable of feeding. The next 2 pre-adult stages become more pupil-like with a degree of tissue reorganization, a cocoon may even be formed. Subdivision, Holometabola. The following Neopteran orders comprise the most advanced and successful of all insects. The immature stages are called larvae and look very different and have different lifestyles to the adults. The wings develop internally and metamorphosis from larva to adult takes place during a pupal stage. Megaloptera. Alderflies and dobsonflies. Approximately 300 species. Body length, 10 to 150 m. Wingspan, 18 to 170 m. The 2 families that comprise this small order, alderflies Cealidae and dobsonflies Corydalidae, are the most primitive insects with complete metamorphosis. The head has conspicuous compound eyes and long, thread-like antennae. Ocelli are present in corydalids but absent in cealids, despite having well-developed jaws. Prologue XXV. Adult megalopterans do not feed. In some male dobsonflies the jaws may be several times the length of the head and used in male-to-male combat or for grasping the female. Megalopterans have two pairs of similarly sized wings, which are held roof-like over the body. Megaloptera are found near cool, clean streams in temperate regions. Dobsonflies prefer running water while alderflies can be found in ponds and canals as well as streams. The predaceous larvae are aquatic with simple or branched, abdominal gills. Larval development can take anything from 12 months in alderflies but sometimes more than 48 months in dobsonflies. Pupation takes place on land within a simple chamber made in moist soil, sand or mossy vegetation or under rotting wood. The pupae have functional jaws, can move around freely and even protect themselves. Raphidioptera. Snakeflies. Approximately 220 species. Body length, 6 to 28 m. Confined to cool, temperate woodlands, this order comprises just two families, the Raphidiidae and the Inocellidae. The large head, which is supported by an elongate prothorax, is slightly flattened, broad in the middle and tapers to the rear. The antennae are slender and the compound eyes are conspicuous. Ocelli are present in the Raphidiidae but absent in the Inocellidae. The biting mouthparts are forward-facing to seize prey. The two pairs of wings are similarly sized, clear and have similar venation to that of megalopterans, but the veins are forked close to the wing margins as in neuropterans. Both pairs of wings have a small, darker pale mark called the pterostigma on the front edge, toward the wing tips. The females, which are a little larger than males, have a long, slender and conspicuous ovipositor. Snakeflies are closely related to alderflies but differ in that the larvae are completely terrestrial and the adult stage feeds. Neuroptera. Antlions, lacewings and relatives. Approximately 5,000 species. Body length, 2 to 90 m. Wingspan, 5 to 150 m. Adult neuropterans have biting mouthparts, a pair of conspicuous, laterally placed compound eyes and may have ocelli. The antennae are generally long and thread-like, and in some oldflies and antlions the end of the antennae may be swollen to form a club. The adults of some families have prothoracic glands capable of producing substances that repel some predators. There are usually two pairs of XXVI prologue. Similarly sized wings held roof-like over the body at rest. The venation in most neuropterans is net-like, with the main veins forking at the wing margins. The majority of species are predatory and mainly active in the evening or after dark. The larvae of all species, which have their mandibles and maxillae united to form a pair of sharp, sucking tubes, are highly predaceous and can be found in a wide range of habitat types. The species of some families are very similar to other insects. Adult mantispidae have enlarged, raptorial front legs like those of praying mantids. Oldflies Ascalophidae are aerial predators and look very like dragonflies. Coleoptera. Beetles. Approximately 370,000 species. Body length, 0.1-180 mm, mostly under 25 mm. This very large order makes up at least 40% of all insect species. The head has conspicuous compound eyes, antennae usually with less than 11 segments and biting mouthparts. Ocelli are typically absent. The prothorax is usually large and freely articulated with the rest of the thorax. The toughened front wings, or elytra, meet in the body midline and cover the larger membranous hindwings, which are folded lengthwise and crosswise underneath. Beetles can be found in every conceivable terrestrial and freshwater habitat. The possession of protective elytra has allowed beetles to burrow, dig and squeeze into places that other insects cannot reach without compromising their ability to fly. The order contains many scavengers, predators and a few specialized parasites, but the vast majority of beetle species are herbivorous, and here lies the second major reason for their great success. The rise to dominance of the flowering plants Angiospermae in the Cretaceous provided herbivorous beetles with multiple opportunities to radiate. The order is divided into four very unequal suborders. The Archostomata comprises a very small group of specialist wood borers. The Mxeophaga is made up of around 60 species of small aquatic species. The Adephaga, comprising about 10% of all beetles, is made up of 12 families of ground-living and aquatic species where the larvae and adults are predaceous. The species that make up the largest suborder, the Polyphaga, have very diverse lifestyles and eating habits. Strepsiptera. Strepsipterans. Approximately 600 species. Body length, 0.4-35 mm, mostly under 6 mm. Strepsipterans are highly specialized endoparasites of other insects in more than 30 insect families belonging to the orders Thysanura, Blatodia, Mantodia, Orthoptera, Hemiptera, Diptera and Hymenoptera. The adults are dimorphic. Females are typically endoparasitic without eyes, antennae, mouthparts, legs are. Prologue XXV. Wings. Males are free-living, with raspberry-like eyes, branched antennae, and wings. The front wings are small and strap-like while the hindwings are fan-shaped. The order is divided into two suborders, the Mengenilidae, one small family, the Mengenilidae, and the Stylopidae, 7 families. In the Mengenilidae, full-grown male and female larvae leave the hosts, which are species of silverfish, and pupation takes place as outside. In this family, unusually, both adult males and females are free-living, but the females are not grub-like and have normal features of adult insects, such as legs and antennae. Females of all other families are totally endoparasitic. They never leave the confines of their host's body and are surrounded by the cuticle of their own pupal stage. Mecoptera. Scorpion flies. Approximately 600 species. Body length, 3 to 28 m. Scorpion flies are elongate insects found mostly in damp woodlands. The head, which is characteristically extended downwards to form a beak, has biting mouthparts, slender, thread-like antennae, large compound eyes and 3 ocelli. They usually have 2 pairs of large, narrow wings, but some species are short-winged or wingless. The legs are long and slender in most species, but in the hanging fly's bitacity they are very long and used for prey capture. The fifth tarsal segment of the hindlex is enlarged and raptorial to seize small insects. The majority of other scorpion flies feed on dead or dying insects and will also feed on carrion, nectar, sap and fruit juices. Siphonaptera. Fleas. Approximately 2,500 species. Body length, 1 to 8 m, mostly under 5 mm. Found wherever there are suitable hosts, fleas are a distinctive and readily recognizable group. Well over 90% of flea species feed on the blood of land mammals, the remainder are bird ectoparasites. Fleas are small, wingless, tough-bodied and laterally flattened. The head typically has very short, 3-segmented antennae, which fit into grooves and short mouthparts for piercing skin and sucking blood. Fleas may have a pair of simple, lateral eyes similar to a chelly, and are negatively phototactic, avoid light. The enlarged hindlex are part of the flea's unique and powerful jumping mechanism, which incorporates an energy store made of a rubber-like protein called resilin. Comb-like structures on the cheeks and the posterior edge of the pronotum of many species, together with numerous backward-pointing spines and bristles on. XXV prologue. The body, help the fleas to remain in the host's fur. As holometabolous insects, the larvae are very different from the adults and feed on detritus and dried blood in the host's lair or den. Pupation takes place inside a loose cocoon. Many flea species are disease vectors. Diptera. True flies. Approximately 122,000 species. Body length, 0.560 mm. Wingspan, up to 75 mm. Most of the species that make up this huge and diverse order are beneficial to ecosystem function as pollinators, parasites and predators, and are vital to the processes of decomposition and nutrient recycling. However, the activities of relatively few species have a greater impact on man and other animals than any other insect group. Perhaps as many as 1 person in 6 is affected by a fly-borne disease such as malaria, yellow fever, dengue fever and leishmaniasis. Flies have a mobile head with large compound eyes and 3 ocelli. The mouthparts, which vary according to diet, are adapted for lapping and sponging liquids or piercing and sucking. A characteristic feature of the order is the possession of a single pair of membranous front wings, although some ectoparasitic species are wingless. The hindwings in all species are reduced to form a pair of balancing organs called halteres. The order is divided into 2 suborders, the Nematocera and the Brachycera. Nematocera is the more primitive suborder, and includes crane flies, mosquitoes, black flies, midges and fungus gnats, with delicate thread-like antennae. The Brachycera are more robust, with short, stout antennae of less than 6 segments, and include the orthorhaphan groups, typified by horse flies and robber flies, and the cyclorphan species such as fruit flies, hover flies, blowflies and flesh flies. Larval habits vary from fully aquatic to terrestrial and many larvae are serious plant pests. Trichoptera. Caddis flies. Greater than 11,000 species. Body length, 2 to 38 m. Caddis flies are mainly nocturnal and can be found almost everywhere there is freshwater. The elongate adults are rather moth-like in appearance with long, slender legs. The body and wings, particularly the front wings, are covered with hairs. The head has a pair of large compound eyes, long, thin antennae and 2 or 3 ocelli may be present. The weakly developed mouthparts allow adults to lick up water and nectar, but many do not feed as adults. The front and hind pairs of wings are held over the body in a characteristically tent-like manner. Prologue XXIX. The caterpillar-like larvae, which are aquatic, show a range of feeding habits. Some species may be free-living or spin food-catching nets, but most live inside portable tube-like cases made from sand grains, small stones or bits of vegetation held together with silk secreted from glands in the head. The order, which is most closely related to the Lepidoptera, is divided into 2 suborders, the Annulipalpia, mostly with net-spinning larvae, and the Integrapalpia, comprised of species with mostly tube case-building larvae. Lepidoptera. Butterflies and moths. Approximately 200,000 species. Wingspan, 3 to 300 m, mostly under 75 mm. Members of this readily recognizable order occur everywhere there is vegetation. The body and wings of these familiar insects are covered with minute scales, which may be colored or iridescent. The compound eyes are large and the mouthparts typically take the form of a coiled proboscis through which liquids such as nectar can be sucked. The larvae, known as caterpillars, are typically herbivorous and have a number of abdominal prolegs in addition to the 3 pairs of thoracic legs. When fully grown they spin a silk cocoon in which they pupate. Some species are significant plant pests. The order is divided into 4 suborders, 3 of them, the Zoogloptera 1 family, Micropterigidae, the Aglossata 1 family, Agathophagidae, and Heterobathmina 1 family, Heterobathmiidae with only a handful of species. The 4th, Glossata, contains the vast majority of the species. Within the Glossata, the superfamily Populionoidea comprises the 4 true butterfly families, the Populionidae, Pieridae, Lycaenidae and Nymphalidae. The first Lepidoptera appeared in the Jurassic and then radiated greatly with the rise of flowering plants in the Cretaceous. Hymenoptera. Sawflies, wasps, bees and ants. Greater than 150,000 species. Body length, 0.2570 mm. Abundant and ubiquitous, it is almost certain that the true number of living species of Hymenoptera may exceed 500,000. Species within the order exhibit an incredible diversity of lifestyles, solitary or social, herbivorous, carnivorous or parasitic. The Hymenoptera must be regarded as the most beneficial of all insects for the control of natural insect populations exerted by parasitic and predatory wasp species and the pollination services of bees. The head carries a pair of thread-like antennae, a pair of well-developed compound eyes and, usually, 3 ocelli. The mouthparts are adapted for chewing and biting, but, in many species, liquids are ingested. In the bees superfamily. XXX Prologue. Prologue XXXI. Apoidea, the maxillae and the labium are extended and modified to form a tongue through which nectar is sucked. Most species are strong flyers with 2 pairs of membranous wings which are joined in flight by a row of small hooks called hamuli. The order is divided into 2 suborders, the symphytid sawflies and the apocritet wasps, ants and bees. Sawflies have herbivorous larvae and the adults do not have a constricted waist. The females have a saw-like ovipositor. The females have a saw-like ovipositor for laying eggs into plant tissue. In the apocrita, the first segment of the abdomen is fused to the thorax and the second, and sometimes the third, abdominal segments are very narrow, which gives the distinctive wasp-waisted appearance. Parasitic apocritans have a slender and sometimes very elongate ovipositor for penetrating and laying eggs in other insects. The aculate apocritans, stinging wasps, ants and bees, have a modified ovipositor in the form of a sting with an associated venom gland. Illustrations by Karen Hiskok Lawrence, KHL Creative. 1.1 Head. The insect head is a strongly sclerotized capsule joined to the thorax by a flexible, membranous neck. It bears the mouthparts, comprising the labrum, mandibles, maxillae and labium, and also the antennae, compound eyes and ocelli. On the outside it is marked by grooves, most of which indicate ridges on the inside. Some of these inflections extend deep into the head, fusing with each other to form an internal skeleton. These structures serve to strengthen the head and provide attachments for muscles, as well as supporting and protecting the brain and foregut. The head is derived from the primitive pre-oral and post-oral segments. Molecular studies of the females have a saw-like. The aculate apocritans, stinging wasps, ants and bees, have a modified ovipositor in the form of a sting with an associated venom gland. 1.1 Head. The insect head is a strongly sclerotized capsule joined to the thorax by a flexible, membranous neck. It bears the mouthparts, comprising the labrum, mandibles, maxillae and labium, and also the antennae, compound eyes and ocelli. On the outside it is marked by grooves, most of which indicate ridges on the inside. Some of these inflections extend deep into the head, fusing with each other to form an internal skeleton. These structures serve to strengthen the head and provide attachments for muscles, as well as supporting and protecting the brain and foregut. The head is derived from the primitive pre-oral and post-oral segments. Molecular studies of Drosophila suggest that there are 7 head segments: labral, ocular, antennal, intercalary, mandibular, maxillary and labial. The last 3 segments are post-oral and are innervated by the 3 neuromers of the subesophageal ganglion, see chapter 20. They are often called the gnathal segments because their appendages form the mouthparts of the insect. The pre-oral segments are innervated by the brain, but their nature and number remains contentious. The protocerebrum forebrain innervates the compound eyes, the detocerebrum midbrain innervates the antennae, and the labrum receives its innervation from the tritocerebrum hindbrain, see chapter 20. 1.1.1 Orientation. The orientation of the head with respect to the rest of the body varies. Figure 1.1. The hypognathous condition, with the mouthparts in a continuous series with the legs, is probably primitive. This orientation occurs most commonly in phytophagous species living in open habitats. In the prognathous condition the mouthparts point forwards, and this is found in predaceous species that actively pursue their prey, and in larvae, particularly of Coleoptera, which use their mandibles in burrowing. In Hemiptera, the elongate proboscis slopes backwards between the forelegs. This is the opisthorinchus condition. The mouthparts labrum with a basal segment called the clypeus, mandibles, labium and maxillae. B. Prognathous. Mandible. Maxillary palp. Labial palp. Antenna. Prothoracic leg. C. Opisthorinchus antenna. Prothoracic. Leg mesothoracic leg. Proboscis. Hypognathous. Mandible. Maxillary. Palp. Labial. Palp. Antenna. Prothoracic leg. Mesothoracic leg. Figure 1.1 Orientation of the head. Hypognathous, mouthparts ventral, in a continuous series with the legs grasshopper. B. Prognathous, mouthparts in an anterior position beetle larva. C. Opisthorinchus, sucking mouthparts with the proboscis extending back between the front legs aphid. 4. Head. Enclose a cavity, the pre-oral cavity, which is divided into 2 sections by the hypopharynx. Figure 1.2. The larger of these sections, the sabarium, is enclosed between the hypopharynx and the labrum clypeus, with the true mouth the opening to the foregut at its inner end. Between the hypopharynx and the labium is a smaller cavity known as the salivarium, into which the salivary duct opens. 1.1.2 Rigidity. The head is a continuously sclerotized capsule with no outward appearance of segmentation, but it is marked by The head is a continuously sclerotized capsule with no outward appearance of segmentation, but it is marked by a number of grooves. Most of these grooves are sulci singular, sulcus marking lines along which the cuticle is inflected to give increased rigidity. The term suture should be retained for grooves marking the line of fusion of 2 formerly distinct plates. The groove which ends between the points of attachment of maxillae and labium at the back of the head is generally believed to represent the line of fusion of the maxillary and labial segments, and is therefore known as the postoccipital suture. Since the sulci are functional mechanical developments to resist the various strains imposed on the head capsule, they are variable in position in different species and any one of them may be completely absent. However, the needs for strengthening the head wall are similar in the majority of insects, so some of the sulci are fairly constant in occurrence and position. Figure 1.3. The most constant is the epistomal frontoclypeal sulcus, which acts as a brace between the anterior mandibular articulations. At each end of this sulcus is a pit, the anterior tentorial pit, which marks the position of a deep invagination to form the anterior arm of the tentorium. The lateral margins of the head above the mandibular articulations are strengthened by a horizontal inflection indicated externally by the subgenal sulcus. This sulcus is generally a continuation of the epistomal sulcus to the postoccipital suture. The part of the subgenal sulcus above the mandible is called the pleurostomal sulcus, the part behind the mandible is the hypostomal sulcus. Another commonly occurring groove is the circumocular sulcus, which strengthens the rim of the eye and may develop into a deep flange protecting the inner side of the eye. Sometimes this sulcus is connected to the subgenal sulcus by a vertical subocular sulcus. The inflections associated with these sulci act as a brace against the pull of the muscles associated with feeding. The circumentanal ridge, marked by a sulcus externally, strengthens the head at the point of insertion of the antenna, while running across the back of the head, behind the compound eyes, is the occipital sulcus. The areas of the head defined by the sulci are given names for descriptive purposes, but they do not represent primitive sclerites. Since the sulci are variable in position, so too are the areas which they delimit. The front of the head, the frontoclypeal area, is divided by the epistomal sulcus into the frons above and the clypeus below, figure 1.3. It is common to regard the arms of the ecdicial cleavage line as delimiting. Frontal ganglion brain. Pharynx. Salivary duct. Subesophageal. Ganglion suspensory. Sclerite salivarium. Labium. Lingual sclerite. Frons. Pharyngeal. Dilator muscles. Mouth. Cibarium. Clypeus. Labrum. Epipharynx hypopharynx. Figure 1.2 Pre-oral cavity and some musculature. Diagrammatic vertical section through the head of an insect with biting and chewing mouthparts. Sclerites associated with the hypopharynx are black with white spots. Muscles attached to these sclerites move the hypopharynx after Snodgrass, 1947. 1.1 Head 5. The frons dorsally, but this is not necessarily so. From the frons, muscles run to the pharynx, the labrum and the hypopharynx. From the clypeus arise the dilators of the cibarium. The two groups of muscles are always separated by the frontal ganglion and its connectives to the brain, figure 1.2. Dorsally the frons continues into the vertex and posteriorly this is separated from the occiput by the occipital sulcus. The occiput is divided from the postocciput behind it by the postoccipital suture, while at the back of the head, where it joins the neck, is an opening, the occipital foramen, through which the alimentary canal, nerve cord and some muscles pass into the thorax. The lateral area of the head beneath the eyes is called the genna, from which the subgenna is cut off below by the subgenal sulcus, and the postgenna behind by the occipital sulcus. The region of the subgenna above the mandible is called the pleurostoma, and that part behind the mandible is the hypostoma. In hypognathous insects with a thick neck, the posterior ventral part of the head capsule is membranous. The postmentum of the labium is contiguous with this membrane, articulating with the subgenna on either side. The hypostomal sulci bend upwards posteriorly and are continuous with the postoccipital suture, figure 1.4a. In insects with a narrow neck, permitting greater mobility of the head, and in prognathous insects, the cuticle of the head below the occipital foramen is sclerotized. This region has different origins. In Diptera, the hypostomata of the two sides meet in the midline below the occipital foramen to form a hypostomal bridge that is continuous with the postocciput, figure 1.4b. In other cases, such as Hymenoptera and the water bugs Notonecta and Nocorus hemiptera, a similar bridge is formed by the postganae, but the bridge is separated from the postocciput by the postoccipital suture, figure 1.4c. Where the head is held in the prognathous position, the lower ends of the postocciput fuse and extend forwards to form a median ventral plate, the gula, figure 1.4d, which may be a continuous sclerotization with the labium. Often the gula is a. Anterior, b. Lateral. Vertex. Genna frons. Clypeus labrum frons genna. Postgenna occiput. Postocciput. Ecdicial line. Anterior. Articulation of mandible circumocular sulcus circumentanal sulcus. Subocular sulcus anterior tentorial pit epistomal sulcus mandible. Ecdicial line. Occipital sulcus. Postoccipital suture. Neck. Membrane subgenal sulcus. Posterior tentorial pit subgenna. Labium. Maxilla. Figure 1.3 Common lines or grooves on the insect head and the areas which they define, italicized modified after Snodgrass, 1960. 6 Head. A generalized condition, b. Hypostomal bridge. Postmentum. Postoccipital suture. Posterior tentorial pit. Hypostomal sulcus. Maxilla mandible. Postocciput. Subgenna postgenna. Prementum. C. Postgenal bridge, d. Gula. Labium. Gula. Postgenal bridge, postoccipital suture. Posterior tentorial pit. Hypostomal sulcus. Maxilla mandible. Postocciput. Subgenna postgenna mentum. Figure 1.4 Sclerotization at the back of the head. Notice the position of the bridge below the occipital foramen with reference to the posterior tentorial pit. Membranous areas stippled, compound eyes cross-hatched. The names of areas defined by sulci are italicized after Snodgrass, 1960. A generalized condition, no ventral sclerotization, b. Hypostomal bridge Daromia, Diptera, c. Postgenal bridge Vespula, Hymenoptera, d. Galur bridge formed from the postoccipital sclerites Epicata, Coleoptera. 1.1 Head 7. To a narrow strip by enlargement of the postgene and sometimes the postgene meet in the midline, so that to a narrow strip by enlargement of the postgene and sometimes the postgene meet in the midline, so that thegulae obliterated. The median ventral suture which is this form a point of contact if the postgene split hegular suture. In all insects, the rigidity of the head is increased by 40 cuticular invaginations, known as brace for the head and for the attachment of muscles. Is Calthe tentorium, figure 1.5. Its two anterior arms arise. In Apterygoda and Ephemeroptera are ventral and a whole sphere variable. So Metamesa pair of dorsal arms arise from the anterior arms and they may be attached to the dorsal wall off the head be short muscles. In Is it, Y-line lepus matidi thyssenora, the anterior arm suniteto forma central plate inert the bridge and dara joint be very short muscles. 1.1.3 MOLTINGIMMATURINSECTSNEARLYALWAYSHABEA lineal long dorsal midline of the head dividing into two lines. Y fig. 1.3. Theorize no groove or ridge along this line, and it is simply a line of this line or every variable line their development and position and an apterygoda, their reducidor absent. These it is the all cleavage line may persistent head adult insect, and sometimes the cranium is inflected along this line to form a true soul. 1.2 Neck. The neck or cervix is a membranous region which gives freedom of movement to the head. It extends from the postocciput at the back of the head to the prothorax, and possibly represents the posterior part of the labial segment together with the anterior part of the prothoracic segment. Laterally in the neck membrane are the cervical sclerites. Sometimes there is only one, as in Ephemeroptera, but there may be two or three. In Schistocerca orthoptera, the first lateral cervical sclerite, which articulates with the occipital condyle at the back of the head, is very small. The second sclerite articulates with it by a ball and socket joint, allowing movement in all planes. Posteriorly it meets the third posterior, cervical sclerite. Movement at this joint is restricted to the vertical plane. The third cervical sclerite connects with the prothoracic episternum, relative to which it can move in all planes. Muscles arising from the postocciput and the pronotum are inserted on the cervical sclerites, figure 1.6, and their contraction increases the angle between the sclerites so that the head is pushed forward, figure 1.6b. A muscle arising ventrally and inserted onto the second cervical sclerite may aid in retraction or lateral movements of the head. Running through the neck are longitudinal muscles, dorsal muscles from the antecostal ridge of the mesothorax to the postoccipital ridge, and ventral muscles from the sternal apophyses of the prothorax to the postoccipital ridge or the tentorium. These muscles serve to retract the head onto the prothorax, while their differential contraction will cause lateral movements of the head. Schistocerca has 16 muscles on each side of the neck, each of which is innervated by several axons, often including an inhibitory fiber. This polyneuronal innervation, together with the versatility of the cervical articulations and the complexity of the musculature, permit movement of the head in a highly versatile and accurately controlled manner. Musculature. Neck. Membrane. Head. Occipital condyle second cervical sclerite. Postocciput. Third cervical sclerite. B. Head movement. Head retracted. Head prothorax neck membrane. Folded. Cervical sclerites. Head protracted. Membrane. Head prothorax cervical. Sclerites. Figure 1.6 Neck and cervical sclerites of a grasshopper. Seen from the inside to show the muscles, after IMS, 1957. B. Diagrams showing how a change in the angle between the second and third cervical sclerites retracts or protracts the head. The first cervical sclerite is small and is not shown. Arrows indicate points of articulation. 1.2 Neck 9. 1.3 Antennae. All insects possess a pair of antennae, but they may be greatly reduced, especially in larval forms. Among the non-insect hexapoda, Collembola and Diplura have antennae, but Protura do not. 1.3.1 Antennal structure. The antenna consists of a basal scape, a pedicel and a flagellum. The scape is inserted into a membranous region of the head wall and pivoted on a single marginal point. The antenna for figure 1.7 so it is free to move in all directions. Frequently the flagellum is divided into a number of similar annuli joined to each other by membranes so that the flagellum as a whole is flexible. The term, segmented, should be avoided with reference to the flagellum of insects since the annuli are not regarded as equivalent to leg segments. The antennae of insects are moved by levator and depressor muscles arising on the anterior tentorial arms and inserted into the scape, and by flexor and extensor muscles arising in the scape and inserted into the pedicel, figure 1.8a. There are no muscles in the flagellum, and the nerve which traverses the flagellum is purely sensory. This is the annulated type of antenna. In Collembola and Diplura the musculature at the base of the antenna is similar to that in insects, but, in addition, there is an intrinsic musculature in each unit of the flagellum, figure 1.8b, and, consequently, these units are regarded as true segments. The number of annuli is highly variable between species. Adult Odonata, for example, have 5 or fewer annuli, while adult Periplaneta platodia have over 150, increasing from about 48 in the first stage larva. The form of the antenna varies considerably depending on its precise function, figure 1.7. Sometimes the modification produces an increase. A filiform. Scape. Pedicel. Flagellum. Antenna for part of. Head capsule. B. Capitate. Scape. Pedicel. Flagellum. C. Lamellate. D. Cychloryphus diptera. E. Lepidopteran larva. Scape pedicel. Arista. Basal. Annulus pedicel scape. Scape pedicel. Figure 1.7 antennae. Different forms occurring in different insects. Not all to the same scale. 10 head. In surface area, allowing a large number of cincilla to be accommodated on the antenna. Figure 1.9 and, in the case of the plumose antennae of some male moths, enabling them to sample a large volume of air. Sexual dimorphism in the antennae is common, those of the male often being more complex than those of the female. This often occurs where the male is attracted to or recognizes the female by her scent. Conversely, in chalcid parasitoid wasps Hymenoptera, scent plays an important part in host finding by the female, and in this case the female's antennae are more specialized than the male's. The antennae of larval hemimetabolous insects are similar to those of the adult, but with fewer annuli. The number increases at each molt. See figure 15.10. The number increases at each molt. See figure 15.10. In Paraplaneta, for example, there are only 48 annuli in the first stage larva compared with over 150 in the adult. The antennae of larval holometabolous insects are usually considerably different from those of the adult. The larval antennae of Neuroptera and Megaloptera. Annulated. Pedicel. Scape. Extensor muscle. Flexor muscles. Levator muscle. Depressor muscle. Flagellum. Annuli. B. Segmented. Pedicel. Scape. Extensor muscles. Have a number of annuli, but in larval Coleoptera and Lepidoptera the antennae are reduced to 3 simple segments. In some larval Diptera and Hymenoptera the antennae are very small and may be no more than swellings of the head wall. 1.3.2 Cincilla on the antennae. The antennae are primarily sensory structures and they are richly endowed with cincilla in most insects. It is characteristic of insects that the pedicel contains a chordotonal organ, Johnston's organ, which responds to movement of the flagellum with respect to the pedicel. See chapter 23. In addition, the scape and pedicel often have hair plates and groups of campaniform cincilla that provide information on the positions of the basal segments with respect to the head and to each other. Scattered mechanosensory hairs are also often present on these segments. The principal cincilla on the flagellum of most insects are olfactory, and these have a variety of forms. See chapter 24. It is common for contact chemoreceptors, mechanoreceptors and thermohygroreceptors also to be present. Where the flagellum is made up of a series of similar annuli, successive annuli often have a similar arrangement of cincilla, but the cincilla are often concentrated in particular regions. In Melanoplus orthoptera, for instance, there are no basiconic or coloconic pegs on the proximal annuli. Most of these cincilla are found on the annuli in the middle of the flagellum. In Pieridie Lepidoptera, most of the antennal cincilla are aggregated on the terminal club. The terminal annulus often has a group of contact chemoreceptors at its tip. The total numbers of cincilla on an antenna are often very large. Adult male Paraplaneta, for instance, have about 250,000 cincilla on each antenna, and male corn borer moths, Ostrenia, about 8,000. When the antennae are sexually dimorphic, as in many Lepidoptera, the more complex antenna bears a much larger number of cincilla. For example, male Telea have over 65,000 cincilla on one antenna, while the female has only about 13,000. 1.3.3 Functions of antennae. The antennae function primarily as sense organs. They are active tactile sensors in some insects' feelers, and they are the primary olfactory organs of all insects. See chapter 24. Very long antennae, such as occur in the cockroach, are associated with their use as feelers. Johnston's organ is important in the regulation of airspeed in flying insects. See figure 9.30, and in some insects, such as male mosquitoes, female Drosophila and worker honeybees, it is involved in the perception of near-field sounds. See figure 23.10. Sometimes the antennae have other functions. The adult water beetle, Hydrophilus, submerges with a film of air over its ventral surface which it renews at intervals when it comes to the surface. At the water surface the body is inclined to one side and a funnel of air, connecting the ventral air bubble to the outside air, appears between the head, the prothorax and the distal annuli of the antenna, which is held along the side of the head. The 4 terminal annuli of the antenna are enlarged and are clothed with hydrofuge hairs which facilitate the formation of the air funnel. In the newly hatched larva of Hydrophilus the antennae assist the mandibles in masticating the prey. This is facilitated by a number of sharp spines on the inside of the antennae. In fleas and Collembola the antennae are used in mating. Male fleas use the antennae to clasp the female from below, and the inner surfaces bear large numbers of adhesive discs. These discs, about 5 mm in diameter, are set on stalks above the general surface of the cuticle, and within each one there is a gland, presumably secreting an adhesive material. Species with sessile or semi-sessile females lack these organs. In many Collembola the males have prehensile antennae with which they hold onto the antennae of the female, and, in Smitherides aquaticus, the male may be carried about by the female, holding onto her antennae, for several days. 12 head. Summary. The insect head is a rigid capsule that is joined to the thorax by a flexible neck. The head bears the mouthparts, the antennae, the compound eyes and the ocelli, and contains the dorsally located brain and the ventral subosphageal ganglion. The head has an internal skeleton that provides strength and attachment sites for feeding, antennal and neck muscles. The antennae are the primary site of olfactory reception and also serve as active sensors in many insects. Recommended reading. Angelini. 2 mouthparts and feeding. Revisedandu. Simpson. Introduction. The mouthparts of insects comprise an intricate toolkit for feeding. The basic elements of the toolkit comprise the unpaired labrum in front, a median hypopharynx behind the mouth, a pair of mandibles and maxillae laterally, and a labium forming the lower lip. These component parts have been modified into a remarkable diversity of forms that allow the insects as a group to exploit an extraordinarily wide range of food sources. This chapter begins by describing how the mouthparts have become modified to suit different feeding niches. Section 2.1. Next, Section 2.2, the mechanics of feeding are described, and in Sections 2.3 and 2.4 aspects of the regulation and consequences of feeding behavior are explained. The chapter ends with an extended consideration of the head glands and their various secretions, introducing, among other things, the world of saliva, the saliovers, Section 2.5. The Insects, Structure and Function, 5th edition ed. S. J. Simpson and A. E. Douglas. Published by Cambridge University Press. Copyright Cambridge University Press 2013. 2.1 Ectognathous mouthparts. In the non-insect hexapods, Collembola, Dipleura and Protura, the mouthparts lie in a cavity of the head produced by the gennae, which extend ventrally as oral folds and meet in the ventral midline below the mouthparts. Figure 2.1. This is the entognathous condition. In the insecta the mouthparts are not enclosed in this way, but are external to the head, the ectognathous condition. The form of the mouthparts is related to diet, but two basic types can be recognized, one adapted for biting and chewing solid food, and the other adapted for sucking up fluids. 2.1.1 Biting mouthparts. Labrum. The labrum is a broad lobe suspended from the clypeus in front of the mouth and forming the upper lip. Figs. 1.2, 2.2a. On its inner side it is membranous and may be produced into a median lobe, the epipharynx, bearing some sensilla. The labrum is raised away from the mandibles by two muscles arising in the head and inserted medially into the anterior margin of the labrum. It is closed against the mandibles in part by two muscles arising in the head and inserted on the posterior lateral margins on two small sclerites, the tormae, and, at least in some insects, by a resonant spring in the cuticle at the junction of the labrum with the clypeus. Differential use of the muscles can produce a lateral rocking movement of the labrum. Mandibles. In the entognathous groups and the Archaeognatha, the mandibles are relatively long and slender and have only a single point of articulation with the head capsule. Figure 2.3. The mandible is rotated about its articulation by anterior and posterior muscles arising on the head capsule and on the anterior tentorial arms. The principal adductor muscles are transverse and ventral, those of the two sides uniting in a median tendon. In Thysanura and the Pterygoda, the mandibles are articulated with the cranium at 2 points, having a second, more anterior articulation with the subgenna in addition to the original posterior one. Figs. 1.3, 2.2b. These mandibles are usually short and strongly sclerotized and the cuticle of the cusps is often hardened by the presence of zinc or manganese. See figure 16.9. These cusps may become worn down during feeding, but the distribution of the harder areas of cuticle promotes self-sharpening. The original anterior and posterior rotator muscles of Apterygoda have become abductors and adductors in the Pterygoda, the adductor often becoming very powerful. The apterygote ventral adductor is retained in most orthopteroids and arises from the hypopharyngeal apophysis, but in Acridiidae and the higher insects this muscle is absent. In insects with sucking mouthparts it may be modified as a protractor muscle of the mandible. Maxillae. The maxillae occupy a lateral position, one on each side of the head behind the mandibles. The proximal part of the maxilla consists of a basal cardo, which has a single articulation with the head, and a flat plate, the stipes, hinged to the cardo. Figure 2.2c. Both cardo and stipes are loosely joined to the head by a membrane so they are capable of movement. Distally on the stipes are two lobes, n. Labrum. Oral fold hypopharynx. Maxilla. Cavity enclosed by oral folds. Mandible. Esophagus. A. Up lateral view hypopharynx. Oral fold. Maxilla. Cavity enclosed by oral folds. Mandible. Superlingua. B. Section at A. Figure 2.1 Entognathous mouthparts modified after Dennis, 1949. Up lateral view showing the mouthparts within the cavity formed by the oral folds. The extent of the cavity is indicated by hatching. B. Transverse section at A and A. 16 mouthparts and feeding. Anterior muscles. Posterior muscle. Torma. Submentum. Mentum. Inner lacinia and an outer galea, one or both of which may be absent. More laterally on the stipes is a jointed, leg-like palp made up of a number of segments. In Orthoptera there are 5. Anterior and posterior rotator muscles are inserted on the cardo, and ventral adductor muscles arising on the tentorium are inserted on both cardo and stipes. Arising in the stipes are flexor muscles of lacinia and galea, and another lacinial flexor arises in the cranium, but neither lacinia nor galea has an extensor muscle. The palp has levator and depressor muscles arising in the stipes, and each segment of the palp has a single muscle causing flexing of the next segment. Labium. The labium is similar in structure to the maxillae, but with the appendages of the two sides fused in the midline so that they form a median plate. Figure 2.2d. The basal part of the labium, equivalent to the maxillary cardines and possibly including a part of the sternum of the labial segment, is called the postmentum. This may be subdivided into a proximal submentum and a distal mentum. Distal to the postmentum, and equivalent to the fused maxillary stipits, is the prementum. The prementum closes the pre-oral cavity from behind. Terminally it bears 4 lobes, 2 inner glossae and 2 outer paraglossae, which are collectively known as the ligula. One or both pairs of lobes may be absent or they may be fused to form a single median process. A palp arises from each side of the prementum, often being 3-segmented. The musculature corresponds with that of the maxillae, but there are no muscles to the postmentum. Muscles corresponding with the ventral adductors run from the tentorium to the front and back of the prementum. Glossae and paraglossae have flexor muscles, but no extensors, and the palp has levator and depressor muscles arising in the prementum. The segments of the palp each have flexor and extensor muscles. In addition, there are other muscles with no equivalent in the maxillae. 2 pairs arising in the prementum converge onto the wall of the salivarium at the junction of labium with hypopharynx. Figure 1.2. A pair of muscles opposing these arises in the hypopharynx, and the combined effect of them all may be to regulate the flow of saliva or to move the prementum. Finally, a pair of muscles arising in the postmentum and inserted into the prementum serves to retract or flex the prementum.